Hello again, and welcome to Cleantech and Coffee. I'm here at the Los Angeles Cleantech Incubator today with Michael Swartz, Vice President here at LACI. First, could you please introduce yourself and what it is that you do here to our viewers?
Sure. My name is Michael Swartz, and I'm the Vice President of Government Relations at LACI. I am responsible for interfacing with local, state, regional, and federal elected officials and government agencies. I also manage a couple of our programs here that interface with public actors, including utilities and agencies. I manage the Innovation Hub program, which is a partnership with Governor Brown's office. I manage our Leadership Council, which is sort of our bi-monthly thought leadership forum that we host. And I spend a good deal of time participating in various coalitions that LACI is part of, like Mayor Garcetti's Electric Vehicle Task Force, the Technology and Innovation Council, the LA Israel Task Force, and several other of those different types of partnerships.
Okay, I want to get back to some of those things a little bit later, but one of the reasons why we wanted to talk to you is that I think there's a little bit of confusion and not full understanding of how the policy framework when it comes to clean tech works here in the US. There's a lot of anxiety about the changes in the federal policy, but at the same time many people observe the many things that the cities and like LA and states like California are doing. So can you explain how does policy and what policy influences clean tech in the state, federal, state, and county, city level?
Okay. Well, I would say there's a famous saying that says all politics is local, and I believe it was Tip O'Neill, former Speaker of the House, who said that. And I don't think that could be any more true than here in LA. LA really sees itself as a trendsetter and as a change agent, and we've always embraced new and sometimes even radical ideas that have ultimately made their way throughout the state and throughout the country.
That is, by the way, the reason why we as Cleantech Invest are here.
Yeah. I mean, LA has always embraced change, and they've never been afraid to, look towards the future. And I think, in terms of policy, what we're doing here in Los Angeles is really driving the creation of markets. I think that is true for California as well.
So state policies and city policies drive the growth, but let's come back to that. But can you explain to what is the role of the federal government?
Okay. Well, the federal government historically, in terms of clean tech, has the primary responsibility has been funding research and development. And historically, clean tech and clean energy hasn't quite received the same level of funding and support from the federal government as fossil fuels, which have had, they've been in entrenched interest here in American politics for 120 or 30 years. And, under the previous administration, we saw a really, we saw a level of engagement by the Obama administration in all matters clean tech that we hadn't seen in previous administrations.
Absolutely. I think this was noticeable in Europe as well.
Yeah, I mean, the investments that the Obama administration made in the development of renewable energy were really unprecedented. A lot of it had to do with the American Recovery Act, ARA, which pumped almost $1 trillion into the economy and invested a really good deal of funding into the rollout of renewable energy and transportation as well. And the amount of funding that was going into research also went up significantly under the Obama administration. And so, myself, I worked at a major research university, UCLA, the University University of California, Los Angeles. And many of our energy researchers receive large grants from the federal government, and it really significantly accelerated their R&D and the pace of success. And then, a few years later, with the transition to a new administration, we're still early in this administration, but we've heard a good deal of talk that this new administration doesn't intend to support research and development at the same levels of the Obama administration, and in particular, certain agencies that support innovative research like ARPA-E will probably see significant reductions in the level of funding. So historically, the federal government has really been focused on supporting R&D, and then they left it up to the private sector to take that intellectual property and take it from the laboratories into the marketplace. I think what you're seeing now is a real transfer of responsibility to the states, and to the local governments.
Well, I think we kind of try to be constructive and look also for the positive in these interviews. And one of the things that is noticeable is that the changes for the negative in the federal policy have in a way galvanized the other actors and even lifted new people and actors to pay attention to these things. So this is very visible in California, LA, and some of the other states. So how would you comment?
Well, I think you're probably referring to the withdrawal from the Paris Accords. Yeah, I think the administration's position that they were going to withdraw from the Paris Accords really had an unintended consequence for the administration, in that it really caused many state and local leaders here in the United States to step up and sort of commit to some of the goals of the Paris Accords at the subnational level and the local level.
And here in LA, I know that there's a lot of California and the U.S. at large is good at driving markets with policy changes, and you have a couple of good examples here. And what are maybe examples that you could mention here?
I mean, in California, policy has played a huge role in driving the development of markets. We have very forward-looking green building codes. We have energy storage mandates. We have a renewable portfolio standard, which is now aiming for 100% renewable by I think it's 2035, 2040. And we have the commitments to a low carbon fuel standard. We're trying to clean up our ports. And so all of these sort of regulations and policies are giving a signal to the market. I'll just give you one example. The Port of Los Angeles has committed to cleaning up the emissions that come out of the port. I think they're aiming for 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. And so the cost estimate for the investments that need to be made to get there are around $15 billion. And so by 2030, $15 billion will be invested. That's a huge opportunity for companies that manufacture technology that will be used to help the ports get there. And that's a signal to the market that it's time to ramp up.
We are part of the market, and the Green Building Code you mentioned is one of the reasons behind us establishing our NUCA solutions, which is an energy efficiency platform for real estate that just established a joint venture here a couple of weeks ago. But okay, I mean, we have exceeded our time. It was very interesting. Thank you for this, and we hope to see you many times.
Well, we always love seeing you around here. Please come back.
Thank you. Bye-bye.